Quickly, accurately, and safely. That's the motto of Ukrainian marksmen. Do you think it's that easy? You think that you just pick up a gun and you're a tough shooter? That's not the case at all. These are not children's toys. This is a form of sport that requires a serious and thorough approach. The heroes of Generation UA will reveal the secrets of their precision. I want to be the best, and it doesn't matter how much energy, money and time I put into this sport. I like this sport because it not only allowed me gain self-confidence, but also gave me an opportunity to find some true friends and a shooting family.
Наверное, первые соревнования по стрельбе появились практически тогда.
The first shooting competitions probably appeared at the same time when ranged weapons appeared, because it was necessary to compare the skills of shooters, improve them, and learn new techniques. Initially, the sport of shooting was being developed as an applied discipline, and then it transformed into a more athletic sport such as the biathlon, which in principle is very similar to the training of reconnaissance scouts. In my opinion, practical shooting became the culmination in the development of shooting sports, which is quite young, about 40 years old. But it found its place in the training of special forces and police units engaged in special operations. The sport of shooting in Ukraine has recently been developing from the former training system of DOSAAF, or Olympic forms of sport. More modern sports, such as practical shooting, have been gaining popularity over recent years. That is due to many factors. First of all, these are new and more interesting sports, particularly for the viewing audience. Secondly, they are more closely adapted to the current realities in our country and the need for training a large number of people in marksmanship, so they have the skills to engage in the military actions in the east of Ukraine, if and when necessary. Applied shooting sports are now very closely overlapping with military and police training systems. For example, our club took part in seminars and judging of army competitions. It is difficult to speak for Ukrainian shooters in all sports in general. But from those who I see, they're entirely different people. Young men, mature sportsmen who were shooting and gaining Master of Sports titles back in the former USSR, and women as well. What is so beneficial about learning how to use firearms? Well, just like love, it's a good thing for all ages. What attracts me personally about marksmen is that they're responsible people. Constant work with firearms is, among everything else, a great responsibility. People who have been into sports shooting and practical shooting for a long time assume certain responsibility. I was introduced to firearms in early childhood. It just so happened that I was growing up in a family of a military man, and a Makarov pistol was my childhood toy. I held it in my hands even before I learned how to walk. In my youth, I was into classical shooting during my school years. Then I switched to other sports and returned to firearms only in 2014. I bought my first rifle, but since owning it is a responsibility, I realized that in addition to owning a gun, I also had to know how to operate it. So I began searching for a place where I could learn to handle the rifle well, and heard somewhere about the shooting club practice. I went there for the first training session, thinking that shooting from a rifle or gun without any experience would be a piece of cake. But as it turned out, it was not as easy as I thought. I simply couldn't do it. So having tried out practical shooting, I realized that I liked it and continued training in this form of sport.
За рубежом этот спорт развит очень сильно, спортсменов там поддерживают очень сильно.
This sport is very well developed abroad. The sportsmen are very supportive, and there are many shooters. You set goals for yourself, and you understand that to achieve them, you must train on a regular basis. This path started from my childhood. My father had a rifle. One day he took me hunting. After that experience, I got interested and fell in love with firearms, just like any other young boy. I started to take a more professional attitude towards firearms in 2013, when I got my first gun. I gradually started training in shooting firearms. My professional training began in 2015 in the practice club. I became seriously interested in shooting in 2014. I was into it before, though because I was a girl, I liked practicing at shooting galleries with pneumatic weapons. But after I saw that firearms were used in the revolution in Ukraine, I decided that I wanted to learn how to handle guns properly, accurately, and professionally, so that I would be able to stand up for myself and defend myself from any possible assailants or enemies. There is a multitude and diversity of shooting sport. Among them, gun shooting, air rifle shooting, bench rest shooting, the well-known clay-time target shooting, the biathlon, which includes shooting and, of course, long-range shooting. There are different classes of weapons: handgun, rifle, and carbine. Every class is divided into subclasses. For example, rifles have a standard class, open class, modified, and standard manual class. In layman's terms, those are standard semi-automatic rifles or pump-action rifles, while the modified class allows for various attachments to the weapon to facilitate shooting, and the open class is for entirely different kinds of weapons like carbines, AKs. I'm currently using a semi-automatic Benelli M2. But I started training with a Winchester pump-action rifle. Why am I using this Winchester? Well, I must admit that it is currently one of the best rifles for sports shooting. It has proven itself over the years. I started with a pump-action rifle, but with time I came to the conclusion that pump-action is more difficult for a woman because of the recoil of 12-gauge rounds. Plus, the rounds have to be cycled manually, which makes it harder for a woman. So I chose to try out shooting using a semi-automatic rifle of the standard class, which is more comfortable for me as a woman to shoot from. Building a shooting range or a shooting gallery here is not just expensive, but there are also a lot of administrative issues and bureaucratic red tape connected to it. Nevertheless, it's developing and more people take up shooting sports every year. Unfortunately, there are not as many shooting galleries and clubs in Ukraine as we would have liked. Frankly, I find it strange for a country at war. That's because the system that existed, the DOSA shooting galleries and so on, was destroyed. For that reason, it has to be rebuilt from scratch. Fortunately, shooting sports are developing now, and they're mainly concentrated in large cities in Ukraine like Kyiv, Dnipro, and Lviv. It's more difficult in small cities because less people are into it there. Having come to the first training session, I found that I could hit the targets, but I couldn't keep up with the pace of those who had already undergone extensive training. I could not understand how they did it. I started watching tutorials on the internet and regularly attending training sessions specially developed for shooting firearms. Obviously, like with any other sport, that's constant and hard work, as well as training both at the shooting range and at home. I began working hard and training regularly and gradually got better at it. Training gave its results, and during the next shooting session, I entered the top 10 in my class, so I started working even harder, bought a more suitable rifle, and started winning some competition. Unfortunately, or fortunately, probably fortunately, there's a lot of competition within our class with many experienced shooters. The fact that our commendable national team won prizes in our class is proof of this.
Наша сборная в этом году в моем классе на Европе взяла приз.
Как проходило обучение?
How did my training go? First 6 months I studied on my own, and I was searching where to train and who I could learn from to improve my shooting skills. After a while, I finally found the place and signed up for a 6-month-long training course, which gradually taught me how to handle guns properly. Initially, they taught the basics, stances, and first shots. But after that, the course became more complicated and demanding. Basically, that course put me on my feet. That is, it showed me where to go from there and what I had to work on to master the art of shooting. Shooting 12-gauge shells is a bit difficult for a woman. You have to develop the correct stance to compensate the recoil with your body. The process of training with guns is fairly time-consuming. Practical shooting was given the title of an official sport only 2 years ago, after which competition started being held. There are 2 main tournaments in Ukraine, the Ukrainian Cup and the Championship of Ukraine. The Ukrainian Cup is held in 3 stages, while the Championship of Ukraine is one major competition that usually takes place in the autumn. The competitions usually gather about 100 to 120 shooters for every tournament, which is generally a very commendable indicator for shooting sports.
Для стрелковых видов спорта это большой показатель.
My first competition ended in poor results, as is always the case. But in turn, the poor results give you inspiration to improve. My results improved with every competition. After a year of training, when I took 5th place in all of Ukraine, I then realized that I was getting better and that I could achieve the ultimate goal. There was a lot of adrenaline at the first competition, and my hands were literally shaking. But with every competition, I inched a little bit closer towards first place. After I learned to handle the rifle, I started participating in competition. There was a lot of adrenaline and emotion at first. It was truly an overwhelming sensation. But then you overcome yourself, go through the exercises faster, and with higher precision, you begin to simply get an adrenaline surge from this sport and look forward to the ultimate thrill of victory. Our shooting clubs are not limited to communication between members exclusively at shooting range. We also communicate outside the clubs. Many of our members eventually became true friends. I did not even think that it would be that easy to find not just people with similar interests and hobbies, but also that here in our clubs you can find actual friends who will help you out in a difficult situation and give you advice whenever you need it.